Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That powerful insight from Carl Jung invites us to wonder how often we mistake destiny for the silent pull of unseen forces. Think about your past relationships. Maybe you found yourself repeatedly drawn to the same emotionally unavailable type, or you keep walking into dramatic breakups that feel strangely familiar. Could it be that a hidden script, written by ancient archetypal energies deep in your psyche, is guiding you toward toxic patterns, patterns you consciously swear you'd never choose again? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on these mysterious forces to answer a profound question. Are archetypes driving your toxic relationship choices? As we explore Jung's ideas, you might discover that the real reason you're stuck isn't bad luck or poor judgment, but something far more universal and far more transformative. Welcome, everyone. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any future dives into Jungian insights and psychological well-being. In this video, we'll journey into a realm that's often misunderstood and rarely discussed in everyday conversation. We'll explore how certain core archetypes, timeless patterns residing in the collective unconscious, can act like hidden puppeteers, stringing us along in repetitive relationship scenarios. The everyday mind might tell you, "I just have bad taste in partners," or "everyone out there is toxic." But Jung would nudge you to question whether there's something within you that keeps drawing you to the same story over and over. If that idea feels unsettling, take heart. Realizing these patterns is exactly the key that can free you to make conscious, healthy choices and break the cycle once and for all. Have you ever felt a mysterious familiarity when you meet someone new? Maybe you find yourself inexplicably comfortable, as though you've known them for years, even if it's your first encounter. This is one small hint that archetypes, universal energy forms shared by humanity, could be at play. They're like the stage managers of the psyche, setting the scene behind the curtains, orchestrating the lights and music, long before you utter your first line in a relationship. You step onto the stage, believing you're in full control, only to discover you've been given a script that was partly written before you were even born. Yes, free will is real, but these deep psychological imprints can be so compelling that it feels as if we have no choice but to repeat the same drama. This is exactly where understanding archetypes can be a turning point. Once you're aware of them, you can rewrite the ending. Think of archetypes as timeless characters that appear in myths, fairy tales, and even modern movies. The hero, the mother, the wise old man, the lover, and so forth. We all carry these templates within us, and each can manifest in both helpful and harmful ways. When one archetype becomes overemphasized or wounded, it may unconsciously guide our actions toward unfulfilling or destructive ends. For instance, consider the lover archetype. In its balanced form, it brings passion, romance, and intimacy. But if it's entangled with unmet childhood needs or a fear of abandonment, it might push you to chase after people who seem thrilling yet consistently let you down. Suddenly, this blueprint of deep longing becomes a magnet for partners who can't, or won't, offer genuine commitment. You find yourself caught in a loop, wondering why you always attract heartbreak. Yet it's not just about attraction. You may also be unconsciously playing a role that, to the other person, signals it's permissible to be distant or unkind. A real-world example might involve someone named Maria, who keeps finding herself in relationships with highly controlling partners. On the surface, she believes that she just falls for strong personalities. But if you look deeper, there could be an archetypal narrative unfolding. Perhaps she was raised by an overbearing parent, the father or mother archetype twisted into a tyrannical form. So there's an unconscious sense that love is always associated with dominance. That pattern became ingrained so early that she mistakes control for security. Another person, let's call him Jason, might repeatedly end up with partners who need rescuing. He's playing out the hero archetype. The satisfaction of saving someone becomes a romantic high, but it also lands him in toxic codependent relationships. Until Maria and Jason recognize these archetypal scripts, they're likely to keep thinking it's the outside world that's failing them, rather than noticing the role their own psyche is playing. This might sound like we're doomed to be puppets on a string, but that's not the case at all. Jung believed that once we become conscious of these universal patterns, we gain the power to navigate them and make more authentic decisions. Think of it like walking through a labyrinth that's been designed specifically for you, filled with illusions and old memories. If you remain unaware, you'll wander in circles, passing the same statues, hitting the same dead ends. But once you see the labyrinth for what it is, a structure with a pattern, possibly inherited from centuries of human experience, you can find your way out. It's not about destroying the labyrinth. It's about learning how to move through it deliberately, with your eyes open. If anything, these archetypes can serve as powerful allies once integrated into our conscious life. It's at this point you might be having an aha moment, realizing a relationship pattern that once seemed inevitable is, in fact, part of a deeper script. Feel free to pause this video and jot down any insights that come up. True self-understanding often arrives in sudden bursts of clarity. If this is resonating with you, consider giving the video a like or a share to support our channel and help others discover these insights too. And remember, there's nothing shameful about admitting you've been dancing to an unconscious tune. We all do at some point. The real breakthrough is found in recognizing it and choosing to change the dance steps. You might ask, okay, so how do I start rewriting my script? The first step is awareness. Simply noticing that your relationships follow a recurring pattern is a big leap forward. Notice any persistent themes or roles you're drawn to. Are you often the caretaker, the rebel, the perpetual victim? Each of these roles likely corresponds to an archetype. Even your impulses to fix people or to attract someone who embodies a specific fantasy can be clues. Ask yourself, who in my past did this dynamic remind me of? Did I see this sort of dynamic in my parents, siblings, or guardians? Archetypes often get reinforced by our earliest bonds, making us believe certain emotional configurations are normal when they might actually be harmful. One practical application is journaling. Write down the qualities of your last few partners and note the similarities. Perhaps you'll notice they all had trouble expressing affection, or they each demanded constant approval. Then look inward. Did you exhibit the same behaviors with each person? For instance, did you always lose yourself in trying to cater to their needs? This isn't about blaming you for someone else's toxic behavior. It's about illuminating how archetypes can collide to form toxic patterns. As you review these similarities, patterns may leap off the page. You might realize that a neglected mother archetype within you draws you to people who need mothering. Or you might find that a rebel archetype in you is drawn to chaos, so you unconsciously pick partners with dramatic lifestyles. Once you see the pattern, you can make a conscious choice to either continue, modify, or abandon it. Another practical step is to practice active imagination, a Jungian technique where you intentionally dialogue with different parts of yourself. Imagine sitting down with the archetype you feel is most active in your relationship choices. Ask it questions. Why do you keep choosing people who make me feel small? Or what are you trying to protect me from? Listen for emotional responses, images, or even subtle bodily sensations. Active imagination can feel a bit like daydreaming at first, but you'll soon discover it's a gateway to deeper self-knowledge. Often, our unconscious has wise but hidden motivations that only become clear when we give it space to express itself. Let's explore another real-world example. Picture Sam, who grew up with a caregiver who always needed rescuing from life's troubles. Sam unconsciously absorbed the idea that love involves perpetual crisis management. He finds partners who are constantly in distress, financial woes, emotional instability, drama with friends. Sam plays the knight in shining armor archetype, without ever questioning whether he actually wants that role. The moment a partner starts to thrive, Sam either withdraws or sabotages the relationship, because the script he knows requires that he remain the rescuer, crucial to the other person's survival. This pattern left unchecked can spiral into a string of heartbreaks. Sam might even say, "I can't find anyone stable." In reality, the deeper truth is that the stable ones bore him or don't feel like home. Archetypally, home is crisis, so that's what he keeps going back to. Understanding this can be a life-changing revelation. What if you're identifying more with the person who's always getting rescued? Perhaps you've been told you're codependent, but you never understood why you keep seeking someone to fix your problems. The archetypal interplay could be reversed, with you embodying the helpless princess or wounded child archetype, unconsciously seeking a savior. If you recognize this, you might break the pattern by nurturing more self-sufficiency, setting boundaries, and learning to handle your own emotional storms. Over time, your unconscious script can shift, guiding you to healthier relationships. If you're finding value in this conversation, we invite you to help our channel grow by sharing it with anyone who might need this kind of insight. Psychological exploration can be intimidating, but it doesn't have to be lonely. That's why building a supportive community is so important. Drop a comment below if anything in this discussion rings especially true for you, or if you have a personal story you want to share. As we connect, you'll see that these issues are far more common than most people realize. Let's introduce another concept to enrich our understanding: the shadow. While archetypes are universal patterns, the shadow is the personal storehouse of all the traits we've disowned, qualities deemed unacceptable by society or our upbringing. How does this tie into repeated toxic relationships? Well, sometimes we attract or are attracted to people who act out qualities we've repressed in ourselves. If your shadow contains anger you could never fully express, you might find yourself drawn to partners who are openly confrontational or destructive. It's as though some part of you says, "I can't do that, so I need someone who can." That dynamic can be thrilling at first, like stepping into forbidden territory, but eventually it often turns toxic. Recognizing that your partner is mirroring your unacknowledged shadow can be the spark that compels you to own your own anger, rather than choosing a partner who displays it for you. In everyday life, you might see this when someone always complains about their partner's mood swings, yet they're secretly envious of that same partner's emotional freedom. Or it could appear in the opposite way. You might be overly easygoing, but you keep ending up with people who rigidly control everything. If you examine your shadow, you might find a part of you that craves that sense of control but never dares to enforce it. The more you integrate these traits consciously, the less you'll be seduced by partners who act them out in exaggerated or destructive ways. At this point, another aha moment might arise, realizing that we're often both the victim and the perpetrator of our own unconscious patterns. But there's immense liberation in that realization, because if we're partly responsible for creating these scenarios, we're also empowered to recreate them differently. It's like discovering you've been in a dream, half aware, playing a role you didn't choose. Now you wake up in the middle of the dream and realize, wait, I can change this story. That shift in perception can feel simultaneously unsettling and exhilarating, a sign that you're stepping into deeper consciousness. A third practical technique to help you move forward is seeking qualified therapy or counseling with someone familiar with Jungian or depth psychology. Sharing your story with a professional who understands archetypes can accelerate your journey. They can guide you to recognize patterns, confront your shadow elements, and gently release old wounds. If therapy isn't accessible, you might find resources online, guided meditations, self-help books, or discussion forums dedicated to Jungian topics. The key is to maintain a safe space for exploration, where you're able to see these archetypes not as villains, but as aspects of the human experience that can be integrated and transformed. Keep in mind that genuine transformation is rarely a neat, overnight affair. You might uncover layers of unresolved trauma, or you might realize your sense of self-worth is tied to how others need you. Changing those deep-seated patterns takes patience and courage, but it also offers an incredible gift. Instead of feeling compelled by archaic forces you don't understand, you can begin to navigate relationships with clarity and self-respect. Over time, you'll find yourself drawn to people who complement your growth rather than replicate your wounds. This isn't some magical formula that ensures eternal bliss. It's a process of becoming more fully human, more awake to the hidden influences that govern our choices, and more willing to choose differently. Another real-life scenario you might relate to is Ebony's story. She noticed she always falls for the mysterious type. Each relationship starts with a magnetic pull that feels almost larger than life, complete with butterflies in her stomach and a sense of enchanting urgency. But as things progress, Ebony realizes this person is emotionally closed off, leading to constant misunderstandings and heartbreak. Over time, she recognized the pattern came from her desire to unlock someone else's secrets. In archetypal terms, Ebony was enacting the questing lover, perpetually searching for hidden treasure in the other person's heart. By realizing this archetypal motivation, Ebony understood that part of her own inner world felt mysterious and unreachable. What she really wanted was to discover the depths of her own emotions and sense of self. Once she started exploring her inner labyrinth through journaling and therapy, her fascination with emotionally unavailable partners began to dissipate. It was like shining a light into a dark cave. Once illuminated, the cave no longer beckoned with the same haunting allure. Imagine you're in a grand library filled with books that detail countless human experiences. Archetypes are like entire sections of that library, each devoted to a distinct theme or pattern: love, heroism, nurturing, rebellion, and so on. When a specific section captures your imagination more than the others, because of personal history, cultural messaging, or ancestral influences, you keep returning there to read the same stories. After enough repeated visits, you start believing those tales are your only reality. But there are many other sections in the library. You just haven't explored them yet. Realizing this can be one of the most liberating feelings in the world. You're not stuck with one or two old scripts. You have the freedom to browse different archetypal sections that better align with who you're becoming. If you're still with us on this journey, thank you for your commitment to self-discovery. It's not always easy to look behind the scenes of our own psyche. You might feel a mixture of relief and regret. Relief at having found an explanation for your repeated toxic relationships. Regret that it took so long to see it. If that's you, be gentle with yourself. Jung taught that our psyche reveals its secrets when we're ready to face them. It might feel like you've wasted years, but in reality, every step of your journey was necessary to bring you to this moment of clarity. So where do we go from here? The final stretch is about integration and intentional choice. Whenever you feel pulled to a certain partner, pause and ask, which archetypes are being activated right now? Am I craving excitement because I've repressed my own spontaneity? Am I longing for nurturing because I haven't learned to nurture myself? Identifying the archetype at work can shift the dynamic from compulsion to conscious engagement. You're no longer a puppet, but a co-creator of your own relational destiny. You can still choose to explore that attraction, but you'll do so with open eyes and a heart prepared for healthy boundaries and dialogue. Before we wrap up, it's worth noting that archetypes aren't inherently good or bad. They're neutral energies that can either enrich our lives or imprison us, depending on our level of awareness. Archetypes can inspire creativity, compassion, and resilience just as easily as they can lead us into toxic patterns. The difference lies in whether we're consciously relating to these forces or letting them run the show from behind the scenes. To sum up, becoming aware of your archetypal influences can open doors to richer, more authentic relationships. You learn to see the red flags sooner, to recognize your own triggers and protective mechanisms, and to honor the deeply human drive for connection without losing yourself. When you know which script you've been living by, you gain the freedom to revise, update, or altogether transform it. If you resonate with this, I encourage you to share your reflections in the comments. Let's build a community that supports one another in navigating the labyrinth of the unconscious, turning hidden puppets into conscious partners in our personal growth. Before we go, here's a brief recap of what we've uncovered. We started with Carl Jung's perspective that our unconscious drives can shape our fate. We looked at how archetypes, universal patterns such as the lover, the hero, or the wounded child, can influence our relationship choices, often guiding us into repeated toxic cycles. We explored supporting ideas like the shadow, which houses our disowned traits, and discovered how it can compel us to find partners who act out what we repress. We walked through real-life examples like Maria, Jason, Sam, and Ebony, each illustrating how archetypal forces create a sense of déjà vu in their romantic lives. We then touched on practical applications, such as journaling, active imagination, and therapy, to help you break free from these patterns. In terms of guidance, consider setting aside regular times to reflect on your emotional triggers. This might include writing a journal entry whenever you notice yourself intrigued by someone who resembles your usual type. Ask which archetypes might be in play and how they line up with your current emotional needs. Another practical strategy is to talk openly with a trusted friend or mentor who can help you spot these patterns from an outside perspective. If deeper work is needed, seek out a therapist well-versed in Jungian concepts. The key is to approach your search for a partner or your existing relationship with curiosity and a willingness to look inside. Once you see which story your unconscious might be telling, you can choose whether to continue or to turn the page to a brand new chapter. Let's keep the conversation going. Have you noticed any recurring themes in your relationships that might be linked to an archetypal script? Feel free to share or ask questions below. By offering your own experience, you not only clarify it for yourself, but also help others recognize they're not alone. Community matters, especially when navigating something as intimate as unconscious relationship patterns. So if you haven't yet, subscribe and be part of this growing circle of explorers. Every time we bring more awareness to our hidden motivations, we take a collective step toward healthier, more fulfilling connections. Thank you for being here, for opening your mind to the possibilities Jung's insights can offer, and for daring to look at the deeper threads that bind us. Remember that transformation is possible, and it starts with noticing how you've been stitched into certain patterns. Once you pull at that thread of awareness, the entire tapestry can begin to change. And that's where real freedom and genuine love become possible. Now that you've glimpsed the inner workings of these archetypes, you can decide for yourself. Will you keep letting them drive your love life, or will you take the wheel, fully aware, and chart a new course?